My sister was attacked by something that I cannot really explain on one of my family's rural properties. So, this happened quite a few summers ago, and my sister has not been in a good way since then. I live in Russia, and my family is fairly rich and owns a few sets of properties out in the countryside in the middle of nowhere, with pretty much just tiny villages around them, not near the city at all. When I say properties, I mean big places, mansions almost. There is a ton of land to roam around on with forests nearby, and the properties usually have enough rooms for multiple guests. We were staying in one of these properties, and I had my older brother along with me, as well as my sister, who is only a year younger than I am. I was 18 years old at the time this happened. We were pretty popular with the locals since we had money. I imagine a lot of it was fake because people just wanted to see if they could get favors from us, but we did genuinely make a lot of good friends with some of the younger people who toiled away doing manual labor in the village. We would invite them up for big parties, but only when our parents were not around because they really disapproved us of spending time mingling with village dirt, is how my parents would refer to those who were not as affluent as us. This one day, the summer heat was unbearable, so we could not even go outside. Even just sitting indoors was enough to make us sweat uncontrollably, so we did our best to keep ourselves cool. Fast forward to that night. I was just in my room, slowly drifting off now that the heat had mostly worn off. I was suddenly ripped away from my sleepiness because I heard my sister scream. I knew that this was serious because I had never heard her scream like that before. I could hear the fear in her voice as it cracked and wavered. I had only ever heard her scream as a joke to get me in trouble when we were play fighting, but this was real. My brother beat me to her room. The door was already swung all the way open, and there was a hot fire poker tossed onto the floor. The door looked like it had been beaten open with something sharp and metal because the wood was all splintered and destroyed. My brother was kneeling over my sister, who was passed out flat on the bed, and he was basically crying. I had never seen him like this before. He screamed at me to come over there and help. My brother was holding something on her neck, some kind of thick cloth, and he was holding it with a lot of pressure, and he told me to take over before sprinting up to the large bedroom window that was partially shattered and was hanging open. My sister was bleeding. I could feel just how damp and heavy the cloth was, and I lifted it up just momentarily, and I saw so much blood. She had a big gash on her neck, and I felt so scared at that point. I had no idea what had happened. My brother, I don't know what possessed him, but he actually jumped out of the window onto the balcony and tried to jump down to the ground floor while shouting at someone to come back, but I guess he could not do it quick enough. My brother rushed back in, and I was so panicked. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me to shut up and that he would tell me later on. I asked him what we should do now, and he told me he'd call and fetch a doctor. There was one in the local village. My brother drove his car as quickly as he could and yanked the doctor out of bed and explained that it was an emergency. My sister survived by some miracle. The doctor explained that no vital artery or vein was pierced and that she was incredibly lucky not to bleed out instantly and die. He told us that if the wound was even an inch to the left or the right of where it was, she would have been dead. It took her quite a long time to recover. For a long time, it hurt her to even breathe, and speaking was basically out of the question until the wound fully healed up. Anytime that she would attempt to speak, it would put pressure on the wound, and she was scared that it would cause it to pop the stitches and rip it back open. Once my sister had the strength to speak and was not permanently bedbound, she agreed to sit me and my brother down and tell us what she saw that night. I will tell this next part from her perspective. Okay, so after I wished you both good night, I went to my room and locked the door. Then I latched the window, but I left the shutters unlatched. I just liked having that little bit of light creeping in just before it went fully dark, and it wasn't like I was scared of the dark or anything out here. I laid down on my bed but the heat was still way too much for me for quite a while, so I just laid there and eventually moved to the window to look outside. After watching outside the window for a while, just admiring the view, I caught sight of something near the tree line. It looked like two flickering lights. I could not really make out what they were. They would flicker and then stop, and then disappear entirely into the shadows of the trees, before reappearing again. The lights seemed to get closer together, and looked like they were part of the same thing, like only one thing was casting these two lights. These lights were not massive, but they were enough to make out. But they seemed to get larger over time, and then after a while, they seemed like they were moving out of the tree line and appearing closer to the house, larger than before, although I still could not make out what was casting them due to the lack of light by this point. Once these lights got close enough, I could make out that they were not lights at all. They were eyes. They looked as if they were attached to a figure that I could barely see that was quite tall. It looked like a person with bright glowing eyes was slowly approaching the property, and at this point, I got scared, really scared. I wanted to scream, but I almost felt like I couldn't. I felt frozen, and I could not do anything but sit on my bed and watch. This thing started to move away and circle the house, it looked like. At some point, it was no longer visible, and I felt relieved that I did not have to see the thing anymore. So I jumped out of bed and went to unlock my door, but before I even got halfway there, literally, that is how quick it all was, I heard a scratching on the glass. It was aggressive and made this horrible high-pitched sound like nails on a chalkboard. I knew I had latched my window and did not want to turn around, and after a few seconds, the sound just stopped. When I finally dared to take a peek behind me, I got the fright of my life, and I don't know what overcame me, but I just slumped to the floor in fear. This thing was at the window. Its fingers had these long and curled claw-like things where fingernails should be, and it had them slid through the tiny gaps in the glass and the window frame, and was maneuvering them to try and pry open the latch. They looked as if they were made from bone, and they looked really weathered and grey. This thing, it looked horrific. It looked as if it was a regular human, but the head was completely bald, and it had these splotches of skin where the color of the skin had yellowed in patches, and it looked infected. Its eyes were all sunken in and looked really tiny compared to human eyes, and it had these two buck teeth that were constantly protruding, like they were way too big for its own mouth, but they were long and sharp and were more like tusks, but not quite that large, just a little bit bigger than human teeth. I was caught in two minds between unlocking my door and running away, and running back to my window in order to stop this thing from unlatching my window. I was frozen on the spot before deciding to sprint towards my window and trying to push these claws away. It sounds stupid saying that now, and it really was, but I was too frightened to even think straight, and so I'm really sorry. I never should have put you and brother in that position. I thought that if the latch came undone and this thing got inside, then it would get me, and then it would kill you two as well, and I did not want that to happen. I just really fixated on stopping this latch from coming undone. I never got out there in time. It managed to curl its finger and catch part of the latch, and it just yanked it, and then pushed the window open so easily. The creature climbed into the room so quickly that I did not even have time to open the door. It dropped down onto all fours and scrambled towards me faster than I could even see. The next thing that I knew, it was on top of me, and it just sunk these two big teeth into me. I tried to stop it with my hands to push its face away, but it just grabbed them and shoved them aside, and then it bit down. I remember that at feeling this, that I just screamed, and then I don't remember anything else until I woke up and the doctor was there. My brother told me that he spotted this thing dangling from the balcony when he got to my sister, but did not want to leave her because he thought that she might die if she did not get immediate pressure on her wound. He told me that the second I took over, he caught a glimpse of the thing in the distance. He said that this thing managed to leap away with these bounds that looked inhuman. He said it looked like a lion, where it can leap really far away in one leap, and he said the strides of the thing were massive. The doctor urged us to leave that property, saying that it might happen again, and that our sister needed a new environment and less stress. We spoke with a lot of people in the village. Most people thought that some madman had escaped from the mental asylum and then stumbled upon our house in the night. I did not believe them. The story that my sister recounted was so vivid, and she was not the type to lie. My sister begged us both to stay here. She said that she was scared and did not want to go outside. She lost a lot of her joy and spent most of her time locked inside the house or one of our rooms. She traded her room with my brother's room, and he installed new curtains and such so that the windows were harder to see through. Our parents permitted us to own guns for the first time in our lives. We were all taught how to shoot when we were growing up, and we had hunted before, but our parents did not like them alone in our house with us. They liked to be the ones in control of the guns. Anyway, my sister had not even recovered properly when that thing came back. It was my brother who saw it this time. I never did. It did not even bother trying to undo the latch this time. I heard the glass smashing from my room, followed by 3 gunshots and the sound of a screech. The screech did not come from my brother, obviously. It sounded like some kind of a beast in pain. My brother said he saw the thing sprinting on all 4s across the grass, and it kept making a kind of a high-pitched whining noise the whole way, which you could still hear from that open window. My brother saw it reach a wall at the far edge of the property and climb over it into the churchyard. It left behind a lot of blood, which was not red at all. It almost looked grey, like this thick grey gruel kind of colour. It smelled horrible, and it made me feel sick. When I actually smelled it, it made the hairs inside of my nose feel like they were burning a little. My brother said he tried to shoot the thing once more while it was fleeing, but that it was too quick, and that he could not hit it from that far away. I believe him. He had no reason to lie about that kind of thing, and I mean, we saw the window, I heard the shots, I heard the sounds, I saw that weird liquid. There was also another incident just a couple of days later on, which I am almost certain is related somehow. We never left our house, and our parents insisted the property be sold and that we relocate to one closer to the city. The locals were in a complete and utter uproar. The local crypt had been completely vandalized. There were coffins opened up, and not just opened up. The coffins were in pieces, and the remains inside of them had been tossed everywhere, broken into little pieces too. Not a single coffin had been left untouched. It took quite a long time for new coffins to be built, and for the remains to be reburied in their correct places. We promptly moved away, and have not been near that village in many, many years. We still have no idea what the hell attacked our sister. She's doing a lot better now, but she still is not the same person that she once was. She's less happy-go-lucky. She's always really jumpy and scared a lot of the time. And she still has a massive scar that will not ever go away. Okay, so I live in a small rural town in Canada, and I worked night shift for quite a while at a gas station. I have a few spooky stories from my time there. I was 21 years old when this happened last summer. It was my first month of night shift. I would browse different websites while at work and chill, read spooky stories and whatnot, deal with some bro customers, but generally I would do nothing because no one would be around. Fast forward to around 2 a.m. This scruffy looking dude enters the store. He looks like a bum, but I don't judge though. He makes a large coffee, and then he heads into the bathroom. I felt a little uncomfortable with him there. I always do when guys like that come around, but I just try and chill, and I lose track of time. After a little while later, a few kids enter the store. They're carrying a backpack and are all just giggling to each other. They are obviously going to smoke pot in the bathroom, but whatever. It's not really my job. I had totally forgotten about the first guy who went in the bathroom. The kids go in the bathroom and then they come back outside. They smell like weed and they're just buying snacks in the store. They say something to me. They're like, "Hey man, someone left their drink in the bathroom." I realized that the guy that entered before, I never saw him come out of the bathroom and I never heard the door open. After the kids leave, I go and check on the bathroom. There is a single warm coffee on the sink. I freak out slightly. I ignore the ghost coffee, leave the bathroom, and stress out in the back room for the rest of the shift. I question my manager when he replaces me in the morning. The guy laughs a little, then gets a really sad look. He's been working here for years. He says that an old bum used to come around and eat our leftover food that we would throw into the trash at night. He would pick up garbage around the place and return. He says that one night, he got a coffee and went to the bathroom. He had a heart attack in there and died. No one found out until morning the next day. He says that he still comes by to get his coffee. Just leave it there till morning for him. I never saw the ghost or whatever it was again while I worked there. I thought it was cool to think of in my spare time. Okay, so for the second story, I was working the first few days of night shift. I'm being trained with this old night shift guy. This guy is Native American, and right off the boat, he is very spiritual. He believes the world is connected through spiritual energy, and that you can read people's auras if you know how. He's a friendly guy, but everyone thinks he is nuts. He tells me all about how he's trying to achieve spiritual enlightenment. He believes that serving people is the best way. He's a friendly guy. I always joke around with him. I call him stuff like master and sensei. The first 2 days are pretty chill. He teaches me the job and talks about his spiritual chakra or whatever. He spends his breaks meditating. On the third day, he seems upset when he comes in. I ask him what's wrong. "There is a bad aura at the store today, Anon. I should not have come." I'm a little bit spooked, but whatever. He is upset for the whole night. He makes weird signs around the store and barely talks. I feel worried. I do not want Master Bro to actually be crazy. At around 4 a.m., while he is on break, he suddenly leaves the back room. He apologizes and says he needs to get out. He goes to his car. I'm slightly upset. I feel like he's trying to get out of work. Suddenly, there is a loud banging on the back door. We have a door in the back of the store. We use it for shipments. Now it just sits there locked. The banging continues for about 50 minutes. I usually would assume it's a kid, but after my partners freak out, I am not so sure. I keep my door closed. I recall an axe that opening doors is the same as letting spirits in. After a while, my partner comes back. The banging stops. He acts like nothing happened at all. He leaves me confused and anxious for the rest of the night. A few days later, I asked him why he left that night and told him about the banging, and all he had to say was, "Bad things come at night sometimes, and it's better I am not around." I could never get a straight answer from him about all of that, and it always really upsets me. This story is legit. Take it as you will. My step-grandpa was a workaholic. He bought a 5-acre property back in 1993. He spent every waking moment building that house to his satisfaction. The house is almost complete. He drove down an extremely dangerous highway just for supplies. He got out of the truck because he dropped something and ended up getting hit by a car. A passerby sees the hit and run and stays with my grandpa until he dies. Months pass by. I hear footsteps and hammering in the back of the house. It's very faint but undeniable. We go to check it out, and now the hammering is coming from the other side of the house. We just have to learn to live with it. Years pass by. Guests come and go. They revel in the creepiness. They always hear that hammering too, and always experienced other weird things too, like weird feelings and seeing figures at night. Eventually, my grandma could not afford the property anymore. One too many loans on the house made paying for it impossible. I go to check on her. She is in her room, sitting cross-legged and praying. She has candles and incense absolutely everywhere. She asks for forgiveness and for strength. She dips her finger in a cup of oil and presses it to her forehead. Faint footsteps can be heard in the back of the house. She pulls out her revolver. The property is in the mountains. Everyone has a gun here. I shut the door and back away because I am panicked. Boom. Time passes by after that horrible moment, and we go back to visit the new owners who now own the house. They are hesitant, but they allow us to walk around. We do not mention the deaths, but we ask about any sounds in the house. They confirm that faint footsteps can be heard throughout the house, and slight banging around too. The story is getting long, and I don't know how to end it, but you get the gist. Okay, so I was 14 years old at the time this happened. Me and my friend decided to go to his grandmother's house in the woods for a weekend during winter. We decided to go out to barbecue in the woods. It's approximately 100 to 200 meters away from the house. We bring an air-compressed rifle to play pretend that we are hunters. There is a deep ditch with a small stream right beside our campfire, with a small hill right on the other side. We are running around and shooting on the trees. Suddenly, I can hear footsteps in the snow coming from the other side of the hill. We freeze. This faceless, completely blacked out figure comes walking up the hill. This black figure just stops there and seems to just look and stare at us. We say hello, but we get no response in return. We continue saying hello several times to this thing or whoever it was. We still get no response. This figure starts to turn away and starts walking. I can hear snow crackling underneath the figure's feet. It disappears right behind the hill. Me and my friend just stare at each other. We run up the hill to check where the thing went. There was nothing there, which immediately makes me panic, which is weird. Surely I should have been panicked and afraid before at the sight of this thing, but it actually disappearing is what triggers the panic. I run away like the Flash, fucked up on 2 tons of cocaine. I later learned that there used to be a woodcutting factory further into the woods where several men had lost their lives. I never told anyone what we saw. Okay, so these stories are not paranormal, but I got a ton of stories from my childhood, growing up as a kid in a really, really horrible neighborhood, really run down and not well kept, and a lot of not great people hanging around. There were constantly break-ins and shootings and things going on around me, so it was not a great time. This was in Philadelphia, by the way. This first thing, I was around 6 years old, and it was summertime. It was about 90 degrees at night, 32 degrees Celsius. I had a tiny window AC unit in my window. I wake up to creaking noises coming from the unit. The AC just suddenly pops out. I see the most run-down looking crackhead just staring at me. He reaches his arm through the window and just starts slashing his knife in my direction. He's several feet away from me, but I am still scared shitless. He takes the AC, and he tells me that he will come back for me if I ever call the cops, since he knows where I live. That was, frightening, to say the least. This next one, I was around 10 years old. I was walking home from school. I take the route path every single day. One day, I pass by some other kids who are on a stoop. They start trying to talk to me. The conversation just sounds normal. There's no signs of malice. They don't seem weird or anything. One of them suddenly says to me that I am not from around here. I tell them that I live just a few blocks away, which was true. He says, hand over your wallet. I don't have a wallet because I'm 10 years old. Who the hell did they think I was? I also didn't have a cell phone because it's the year 2000 and we were really, really poor. He pulls out a fucking gun. He takes my backpack away from me, which only has my school supplies in, like all of my textbooks and pens and pencils and stuff. Nothing that was actually worth anything. I call the cops later on. I run into him at the supermarket a week later. He tells me if he ever sees me again around his house, he will kill me. I can never take that route to school again. Here is my last one for today. I know these all sound crazy and made up, but this really was just a horrible place to live, and there really are people like this. So, I was 13 years old. I go to the basement to do a load of laundry. The basement shape follows the shape of the house. It's a long rectangle with a few rooms, but no doors. The stairs are in the center of the rectangle. The washing machine is to the left. The storage is to the right. I rarely ever go to the storage section. I am alone that day. I am just putting clothes in the washing machine. I hear a sneeze coming from the storage section behind me, followed by a really quiet shit. I turn around. I see a crackhead poke his head out from around a wall. He rushes towards me, and he is brandishing a knife. I grab a nearby broom and try and poke him away with it to get to the stairs. I bolt up the stairs and lock the door, and then I call the cops. By the time they even get there, he has escaped through the basement window. I find a bunch of shit in the room that he was hiding in. I'm talking syringes, blankets, panties, even some toys from my room. I see him a few weeks later, just walking into a house a few houses away through the front door. I call the cops. It turns out that he killed the old lady who was living there and just moved himself in. I am glad I am out of that shithole. As soon as I turned 18, I went off to college and stayed as far away as I could, in a much wealthier suburban state in an actually good neighborhood. If hell truly exists, you could find it in the neighborhood I used to live in. So, just to give you some context for my story, I grew up in West Ukraine in the 1990s. There were lots and lots of unfinished Soviet building projects. There were these 20-story buildings that kids would play in and that junkies would go to shoot up in. The building that we claimed as our own and made it our hideout, it had an apartment that actually didn't even have a door on, and we cleaned it up. One morning in the summer, we were out there messing around, and some homeless guy was shuffling around by the building next to ours. I tell my friends, we seal up the apartment and just watch him. The guy comes into our building. He looks really drunk. He actually walks down the hallway on our floor. We can hear him singing. He starts banging on our door. He says he knows that we stole his vodka. We hadn't. He goes into the apartment next to ours. He shouts at us from the window in the adjacent unit. He tells us he's going to come from the window. As he is hauling himself up and trying to get across, he falls out of the window. By the way, this is the 18th story window. He is just sitting there on the ground. We debate as to what to do. We maybe argue for 10 minutes. We hear banging on the door. We look back outside the window. Guy is gone. We panic. We move everything to barricade the door. The banging lasts for what felt like an hour, but there was no screaming or yelling. We stayed there until sunset. That is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. Okay, so I live in Germany. Here is story 1. At about 7 in the evening, it's pitch black outside. I am driving with my car to visit my friend. I am driving through a small, forested area. The area has quite a lot of dark history and is a really strange place. I have to stop at a little parking area because the cooler bottles in my trunk are rolling around like crazy and are about to explode. I get out of my car and fix the problem. The outside air is very heavy and stinky. I close the trunk and I suddenly see a deer about 10 meters in front of me, slowly walking alongside the road in my direction while staring at me with strange looking eyes, more like eyes of a human since they had more white in them, and it had the posture like a cat about to attack. I jump into my car as quickly as I can since the deer is walking in a very strange way, like a broken machine or something that is wearing a deer costume. It suddenly just runs away, still moving around like it has brain damage when another car appeared on the road. My friends just made fun of me when I told them this story 10 minutes later. Here is the second and final story. It was another night, a few months later. I was driving to my friend's house again, on the same road and at around the same time. I see a person standing at the side of the road, close to a streetlight. The parking area is on the other side of the road. As I come closer, I cannot see the person anymore. Instead, there is just a deer slowly walking into the road. I do an emergency brake maneuver, and the deer just stands there on the road, looking at me. If I didn't stop, it looked as if it was just going to stay there and let itself get hit by my car. It is the same creepy deer, and it does the same strange movements again. Another car suddenly behind me starts honking and then overtakes me. The deer just walks away, back into the forest. I do not know what I saw, but it was not a deer.